there are certain countries that find a loophole in everything, I swear to you. But, or a certain country that finds a loophole in everything. Hey trackies, welcome back to another video. Please remember to smash that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. That's how the video gets to the YouTube algorithm. Share the video if you care. I hope you guys care, so share, and yes, please comment down below. It is a World Indoor Championships year. It actually kicks off on March the 20th through to the 22nd. So yeah, a championship year. And like with many years, World Athletics, tinkers with the rules, and they've been tinkering with the indoor rules. So let's dive into what has been changed, because yeah, this will directly affect our Jamaican athletes. And we've seen in the past where some rule changes have caught us off guard. Some of the athletes seemingly went into the event not even knowing that there was a rule change. I remember when they just changed, the rule from jostling for positions, I suppose, when your athlete is in, the home straight, and they change it to, okay, you wait until, you see where your athlete's position is at 150, and that's how every, athlete should take up their position, and you can't switch your position after that. I remember the first championship after that, our Jamaicans didn't know that was going on. So yeah, we need our athletes to know what's going on. As a matter of fact, I need J3As to make sure that they're ensuring that the athletes know what's going on. You know what I mean? Because it's still their job to ensure that they don't assume that the athletes know the rules and tell the athletes the rules, once they're in competition, right? But as I said, their rules, let's dive into what these new rules are.
Indoor athletics will see several new rule changes for the 2026 season. So, here's everything you need to know. The first change is that there will be a new race format in the 400 meters. Each heat will feature 4 athletes using lanes 3 to 6 only, with lanes 1 and 2 left empty due to their disadvantage on the tight indoor curves. This aims to ensure fairer racing conditions, increased participation, and enhanced athlete and spectator experience.
All right, so that's the first rule. They didn't make mention of what happens in the finals. They just said each heat, but the finals are also going to be brought down into heats as well, based on my understanding of what's happening here. And I absolutely agree with this change 100%. No, the indoors made for, winter countries or colder countries, clearly. So you find where countries like Jamaica, they are relatively inexperienced, unless you do, the indoor circuit, from a collegiate perspective. And even when you do it, you never really get used to competing indoors, because I've seen a number of athletes compete, indoors over the years, and they still are not good at it when we talk about, going around those sharp bends, right? So for them to make this change and no longer allow these, 400-meter athletes to run in lane 1 and lane 2 and only use 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm absolutely in agreement with it. When you talk about especially being in like a finals, and you're already at a disadvantage if you take into consideration outdoors, yeah, you're already at a disadvantage when you're competing in, lane 1/lane 2. Well, lane 2 is no longer a bad lane, I think, but anyway, well, no, they don't use lane 1 outdoors if it's a 9-lane track. If it's an 8-lane, then they still use it. But you know what I mean, you're already at a disadvantage. But think about those sharp turns, indoors. I've seen our Jamaican athletes struggle. Let's use Rasheen McDonald, as an example. When you're going at such high speeds, to stay in a lane on that turn or those turns is really, really hard, right? So I am 100% in agreement with them, only using, 3, 4, 5, 6, going forward. And as I did highlight, when I just started to, speak on this particular change, is the finals, will also be done into 2 heats, based on my understanding, right? So yeah, we will, see athletes being able to give their best without, potentially struggling as much as they have done, in the past. As I said, especially for countries that are inexperienced when, when it comes to competing indoors. And I love the fact that they mentioned more participation, because there's a lot of countries that opt out of competing indoors because they're worried about those same sharp turns and their athletes potentially getting injured. So they're like, okay, we're not going to do it. So hopefully now that, athletes have fairer conditions, right, to compete under, hopefully we'll be able to see, athletes that, opted out in the past, join in. So let us see what will happen here on. Oh, but yeah, let's continue.
Second change introduces a new breakpoint in the 800 meters. Athletes will no longer merge after the first curve. Instead, they will merge at the new breakpoint, which is now located after the second curve, approximately at the 165-meter mark, the same point used in the 400 meters. This change gives athletes more time and space to spread out, reducing early congestion and creating a safer racing environment. The third change.
Listen, I'm 100% in agreement with this particular rule change. Braking after 155 meters and not, after the first, turn like they usually were doing, indoors for the 800 meters. Yeah, I love that because, like they mentioned, the congestion, the jostling for positions, right? That's something that happens a lot, indoors. And the 800 meters, we've seen a number of athletes fall. Athletes even get disqualified, even questionable disqualifications for me, because sometimes you're watching and you're like, okay, why did A athlete get disqualified, doing the same thing we saw B athlete do, and B athlete didn't get disqualified? You know what I mean? Those things have always been questionable. So now that they've extended the break point, we would hopefully see separation between the athletes by then, right? So that by the time they break, you won't see that jostling. Though I have to say, when it comes to the finals on the 800 meters and how these athletes are competing, we may still get, jostling break after the break, because the athletes will still be, closely, together. You know what I mean? So let us see, though. I think this is a good thing. I definitely think this is a good thing, especially for the earlier rounds. We'll have to see, what it does for the later rounds as well. But yeah, I think that this is, also a good move. Let's dive into the next rule.
Change, a new point of determination for the relay lineups. Instead of the 150-meter mark, it is now the 200-meter mark that will determine the order in which the teams line up for the Baton pass. The first team to reach this line will have the first claim on the inside lane. And finally, there.
Okay, so relays, I hate relays indoors. I just, just don't like it, because it just makes things a whole lot more, worse when you talk about athletes fighting for positions, right? The same jostling, right? That affects, most events, indoors. Yeah, it definitely affects the relay, but with a baton in hand, I think it makes things worse. This particular change, making it, 200 versus 150, where, that person gets pole position, I don't even know if I prefer that over, what was there before, because from a tactical perspective, I actually do like when, athletes come into the home straight, make that break, because they're trying to probably save their legs, and, they've just enough left in the tank, and let's say they push themselves to the front. I was always for the original rule, where if your athlete pushes, to the front and they make it to the front, then yeah, that person should, be in pole position, and not because, you were leading from 200 meters out means you must still be in pole position. Meanwhile, in the home stretch, you've dropped back because so many people have passed you. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different indoors from outdoors, because I think outdoors you line up, in said position, while because the indoor track is, smaller, you know what I mean? They kind of just let you go one at a time, right? So it's less congested from that perspective. But honestly, I've always loved the first rule. I hate this rule, and even the rule before that, where it was 150 meters, right, where you just sit and wait kind of thing. I don't really like it. But yeah, let's see if it helps, doing what they want it to do. You know what I mean? Let's continue.
There are rule changes regarding the relay batons.
Okay.
Athletes will no longer be required to return.
How shady. Why they using Jamaica? Look how much people drop Baton over the years. Jamaica had, one bad year. Is this the same year Anjanette Knight dropped the Baton too? Hmm. Anjanette dropped the Baton in 2024. 2024 this year? I think so. I think so. But anyway, this is shady using Jamaica. So we dropped the band indoors and outdoors the same year. Oh my lord.
To the exact point where the baton was dropped. Dropping the baton already places teams at a significant disadvantage, and locating the precise drop point during a race would be impractical for both athletes and judges. However, teams can still be penalised if the baton drop causes an unfair advantage, such as allowing an athlete to enter an inside lane and run a shorter distance. For full details on the 20
When they spoke about the unfair advantage, I'm like, I remember the collegiate race I was watching, a 400-meter hurdles race where an athlete, I believe from 5 meters out, I kid you not, 5 meters out, dived across the line. And I thought to myself, that's interesting. Of course, they weren't DQ'd or anything, right? But people always find ways to bend the rules. So I'm glad that they, even though now are saying, hey, if the baton drops, you're already at a disadvantage. So no need to go finding back where, who knows where you were in the first place when the baton drops before you take off again, right? So I love that they've made that change. And of course, they've highlighted, hey, don't think you're going to be smart and try to bend the rules and, do something, where you get an unfair advantage. We will be watching. So in case you're thinking that you're going to get away with it, you're not. So I'm loving that they pointed that, aspect out, because, there are certain countries that find a loophole in everything, I swear to you. But, or a certain country that finds a loophole in everything, right? So with that being said, those are the rules. For the most part, I am in agreement with these new rules. I think it will, help, especially when we talk about the concession indoors. The only thing that I'm not sold on, and it doesn't really have to do with this rule change per se. It's just the original rule change that I'm still not in agreement with which where they have a takeoff. Well, not a takeoff, but once you reach that particular zone, your athletes are allowed to see themselves in that rank to receive the baton. I've never been in agreement with that. So the mere fact that they've just extended it still doesn't make me in agreement with it, right? I still think tactics, should be at play and allow and make the sport more entertaining and more, exciting. When you put all of these, regulations on a race, it just makes it boring, right? If I want to make a move at, 100 meters and put my team in pole position, right? I don't think I should be affected, by that. But well, let's see, what happens here on out. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about the rules? J3s needs to make sure that they, disseminate this information, because they think the athletes are watching, and sometimes these athletes, are not watching. So they need to make sure that the rules are disseminated to everybody, you know what I mean? So that we don't, fall into a spot of bother, right? Like the video, of course, track and subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.